Welcome to the channel, guys. It is a beautiful, cold and windy day. It's just awesome out here. The weather is great, and Cobalt is gonna hopefully get some more work done. And since the last video, which basically consisted of me showing what parts were removed as far as the radiator, intercooler, exhaust, and basically there has been a little bit more done to it since then and since that point. So hopefully I'll be able to go over a little bit of what I did and show you some other stuff. This hood is really pissing me off. Anyway, let's see if it opened the second time. If it didn't, okay, we're good. All right, so basically we'll move the coil out of the way here. Maybe slide that out of the way. So as you can see, there is blue tape and blue all over the place. So 95% of the wiring harness and all the wiring is off and marked, and most of it up here is off as well. There's a couple odds and ends and a couple plugs more that we have to get, and then I have to trace out and mark and all that stuff. We removed the belt and obviously pulled the compressor and everything off because I don't want to have to mess with the AC if I do not have to. If I have to, I will, but I really just don't want to have to do it. So hopefully I can do all this without having to mess with that, even though the coil should technically be replaced because of that hanging down there. So if I have to do it, I guess I will. But with that being said, almost all of the wiring is off and marked, and what I did to mark it is I basically numbered everything. I numbered all of everything that got taped, every plug, everything that I took off got wired, and basically I just, whichever plug I started on got numbered 1, 2, 3, etc. Went all the way up. I don't even know what number I ended on because obviously there's still more, but I did that with every single plug. That way I don't have to fight with it later, and it's so much easier later to figure out where everything went. You're not trying to fight with it and be like, well, this plug went here, no, maybe not, and fight with all that. So that's why I did it, and it's a really good idea, I thought, to have it all labeled. You find the tape that says 1 with the plug that says 1 to the sensor, or the other plug, however the case may be, and you plug it in and you're pretty much done. So I did that for everything. And moving around to the other side, on the driver's side here, I got all this stuff removed. As far as the brake caliper and everything is still here and still hooked up, because I don't want to open the brake system until I'm ready to do anything with that. It's going to be a pain enough to have to bleed it out and everything. So I got all that. I got the knuckle and everything off, and the rotor and everything off, and the axle is actually off of that side as well. And these rotors, now granted, they have sat out for a while, so there you can kind of see what it did look like, but I mean, they're junk. I'm not even going to mess with them anymore. I'm not going to use them, not going to reuse them. So basically those are going to get pulled off of the backs as well. And probably, yeah. So the other side here, I'm going to basically go over how to remove your rotor, the caliper, the knuckle, and to remove your tie rod end, which I didn't remove the tie rod end completely, but I removed it from the knuckle, and to remove the axle. So we're gonna go through all that stuff, and I'm just letting the shocks and everything hang right now. I'm not really gonna mess with them at this point, even though I am gonna change stuff with those. Not gonna get too involved with that, and I want to do a lot more stuff with the interior as well. So we'll jump right in it and get started with this side over here and show you guys how to do that. All right, so basically, first things first, you want to get your caliper off out of the way so you can pull the rotor out, and you're gonna do that. There's one bolt there, the lighting's kind of poor in here, but one bolt there, and then you have another bolt right down here. So you have 2 bolts And basically what's gonna happen is the caliper, the whole entire caliper will pull out of the way. And I like to tie them up just so they're not hanging by the brake line and everything. That's just kind of a thing I do just because I don't like it hanging by the cable or the brake line. So then you'll be able to pull that out of the way and pull your rotor off, and then we can go from there. So I'll get those loosened and get that stuff off so you guys can see what that consists of. So once you get those two bolts off and they look like that, you can then, and you might have to tap it a little bit, you can then pull off the brake caliper, and I'm just gonna let it hang on the line for right now until I get it tied up. And then you can pull off your junk rotor and use it for a quate. And then this car is gonna be getting basically, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be putting on new wheel bearings, spindles, whatever you wanna call it. It's gonna get a lot of new parts because I have it off and everything. I'm doing it. There's no point in waiting 6 months and then tearing this all back apart. That's just dumb. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna wait. I'm gonna do as much as I can right now. I'm not gonna like basically cheap ass this build and do it half, do it by the half. So that what I'm gonna do is remove the axle nut here. And really, I should have done this when the wheels were still on, but just because I am replacing these and everything, what I did with the other one is I put on the socket and obviously the wrench and all that stuff, and then used a long bar to go between, basically through one, under the next, over one, under one, and held on it. Yeah, you shouldn't do that, but this is all going to get replaced anyway, so I'm not worried about the threads. I'm not worrying about damaging them or anything like that because they are going to get replaced. So I would not recommend doing that if you're going to be reusing that. So don't follow necessarily everything I do if you're not planning on if you're going to reuse it or stuff like that. If you're replacing, sure, why not? Go ahead and do it. So that's what I did, and that's what I'm going to do again. And then basically to pull off, we'll work on one thing at a time here. So I'll get the axle nut off, and then after you pull off the axle nut, you're still not going to be able to remove the axle. So you're going to remove, there's 3 bolts basically in the, I believe it's 3 actually. Yeah, it's 3. You got one up top, one on this side, and then one on this side to remove the wheel bearing. And then you can pull that off, and then you're gonna have these 2 bolts, another bolt over here, and another bolt on the control arm. So there's really not a whole lot to it. It's a little bit time consuming and everything, but it's really not that bad to do. It's not terrible. So we got another rotor down, 2 down, 2 to go, and the backs should be a lot easier. All right, so basically how I did that is you're gonna wanna get a pretty big socket, and it's 1 3/16" the socket, and a pretty long socket wrench. And then what I did with this, the breaker bars, I stuck that between, I don't know if you can really see in the time lapse, but you can see the hole right there, as I actually rotated it around far enough to where it actually caught the dirt. And then I just stuck my foot in front of it like this and pried down on it and loosened it right up. This would be a lot easier with power tools, or air tools, I should say. So don't hesitate to use air tools. It's just easier for me to do it this way than drag all sorts of air tools out and everything else. So the nut is loose here, and we can just pull this off now and set that over there as well. And there is a washer on there. It's sometimes really fun to get. You want to take your hammer, that way you can get the axle loose a little bit and work at getting that fun little washer out of there, and it will give you fits. I can guarantee you that, like it's giving me right now. and then you'll eventually get it off, set that aside. And from this point, then what you want to do is remove the 3 bolts that are holding this fast yet, and then you can pull that off. And the other side, actually, believe it or not, didn't come off really that hard. It came off relatively easy. You're gonna want a hammer to beat it off a little bit. And I have all that stuff in here. As you can see here, we have the driver's side. You got your axle, wheel bearing, and what I call the knuckle. And I'm not sure if I want to replace that right away. It's really probably okay, but we'll see what happens. Then what you want to do with all those bolts that you just took off is, or what I'm doing, I should say, there's many different ways you can go about it, but basically like control arm, ball joint bolt, all this stuff, I just put them all in separate bags, tie rod and nut. I mean, I got these bags really cheap. They were $1 for 20 of them for the dollar store. So it's really a good idea to just label everything, put it in its own bags. There's your wheel bearing bolts. So that way when you go to put them on later, whatever you reuse, then you know exactly where it is, what bag, label it properly, boom, you got it, you're good to go, you can throw it on. And it just makes for a lot more time efficient and just a better job, better build, so you're not getting pissed off wondering where these bolts are, because I've been through it time and time again where I don't do that and then I lose bolts and then I'm all mad because I can't find it and wonder what happened to them and why they got lost. So it's just a good idea to do that. So we'll get these 3 bolts loosened and pull that off. Then once you get those 3 bolts off, obviously throw them in the bag, label them, which is what I'm gonna do with all this stuff. But now, okay, so I went a little bit ahead, but basically, let's just say you just got the bolts off, you're trying to pull it, it won't come loose. It's not gonna. You're gonna have to hit it with a hammer and just try and beat it off there on each side and try not to damage the ring too much. Especially if you're gonna try and reuse everything. And then you wanna make sure that your axle is actually out of it and not in the splines anymore. And then it'll pull right off and you can set it aside, do whatever. Now what you can do is you can loosen these 2 bolts up here. But what I did with the other one, and I'm gonna do it with this one, is loosen them enough, but do not pull them out until you get all these other bolts. You got one here, and it's actually on the back side, but then you're gonna have this one here and that one back there. Loosen those, get those off and out of the way, and then you can remove those completely and pull the knuckle out of the way. And you're also gonna have to probably tap on these a little bit, on the ball joints and the tie rod, because they don't always come out the easiest either. So we'll get on that, and then we can remove that whole thing. All right, so then when you finally get all them bolts out, your tie rod end off, and lower control arm. Now I did leave the axle in on purpose so I could show you guys how to remove that if you've never removed an axle before. They're really not that bad. I've done a lot more of these than I would have liked to have done, but basically what they consist of is right back in there where it connects on. You're gonna want to grab a hold of that, and I don't know how well I'm gonna be able to do this while filming, but you're gonna have to pull it off hard. Like you're gonna pull on it and it isn't gonna move. You have to release. You have to get it to release in there. So I'll just set the camera down for right now so you guys can see. But basically, you want to grip back there and just really yank. And there you go. The axle is out. Now, I can almost guarantee you that you're gonna have problems with one side, and it's probably not gonna be the other side. The other side, you're probably gonna be able to get out with not a whole lot of problems. As for this side, because this side over here goes straight in to the transaxle. So basically this goes into another shaft that goes all the way across. This is going inside. This has oil and everything all over it. This does not. So this one, you keep rocking back and forth, it'll eventually release. This one, on the other hand, you might have to crawl under and hit, which is what I did to make this a lot easier. Otherwise, you'd have never got it out. Hit on the end from underneath because you can get at it, and then it'll slowly start working its way out, and you can then pull it off the rest of the way. So there's that axle, and that basically is pretty much it as far as removing the axles go and removing the knuckle, the wheel bearing, and all that stuff. And what you want to do as far as this, if you've never removed the tie rod end or a ball joint, what you want to do, basically this would be sitting on here like so. So that center hole right there would go on there, and this side hole would go like that. And what you want to do is you want to take a hammer and you want to hit right there on the side, and then after hitting it pretty hard a couple times, then you should be able to hit on the bottom and this should pop right out. This thing isn't too bad. On an old truck that I did have, you really had to get in there and beat on them for them to come out. Even the truck, the Ram, when I lifted that, that was the same thing. You really had to beat on them to get them loose, which is good when they're tight like that, because then the bolts and everything come out a lot easier and it doesn't spin the ball joint. So that's basically it as far as doing that. There's a couple other things I'm going to remove, but at a later point. I want to just get everything so I can drop the tranny and everything so we can get the motor out. So I will tie these up so it's not hanging by the brake line. And actually what I did for the time being is I set them up here, and that actually will work perfect. So I don't even need to tie that one up like I did the other side. So that's pretty much it. I'll get all these bolts and nuts labeled and put in the packs, get all the stuff inside, and we'll move on to the next thing. So that's gonna conclude today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it helped you if you were taking apart your front end or you needed to replace an axle or anything like that. I hope that helped. And if you guys have any questions, comments, be sure to leave them below. Be sure to like the video and share it. And definitely be sure to hit that subscribe button. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great day.